Chosen one, pause for a moment and look at the battle you're losing right now. The one that drains you, the one that confuses you, the one that makes you question everything you thought you understood about your path. What if that very defeat you fear is the exact place where God is positioning your victory? What if the ground you think you're losing is actually the sacred territory where your spirit is being rebuilt, reshaped, and reforged? Look deeper. That pain you can't explain, that silence you didn't expect, that door that refused to open no matter how hard you pushed. What if none of it was failure? What if it was divine engineering? What if the loss was not an end, but an initiation? The chosen rarely ascend through triumphs. They ascend through breaks, cracks, collapses, because only collapse reveals what was false. Only collapse exposes what was holding you back. Only collapse opens the path you were never meant to see while standing tall. You think you're losing, but something inside you knows this isn't punishment. It feels too precise, too intentional, too spiritually surgical, and that's exactly what it is. These battles, the ones that feel unfair, heavy, humiliating, aren't here to destroy you. They're here to transform you, to peel away what no longer belongs, to strip the weights you didn't realize you were carrying, to prepare the version of you that can actually walk into the destiny you've been praying for. You're not being defeated. You're being reconstructed. You're not being broken. You're being calibrated. And in the next moments, you're going to understand why 5 specific battles must be lost before a chosen one can truly win in spiritual life. Because without these losses, the breakthrough would crush you instead of crown you. Stay with me, chosen one. Let nothing distract you now. What you're about to hear will make everything you've lived finally make sense. Before we begin, tap like to seal this message, subscribe if you feel this calling awakening inside you, and comment 99, because in the spiritual realm, 99 represents the moment before completion, the moment right before everything aligns. Your alignment starts now. Chosen one, there comes a moment in your journey where your hands begin to slip from everything you tried so hard to hold together. You feel pieces moving without your permission, plans rearranging themselves, timing collapsing in ways you never saw coming. And your first instinct is to panic, because you were taught that control means safety, and losing control means danger. But in the spiritual realm, the opposite is true. The moment your grip fails is the moment God's hand becomes undeniable. The moment your structure collapses is the moment His alignment begins. You've been trying to manage every detail, every outcome, every possibility, as if your destiny depended on your ability to keep everything perfectly in place, but chosen ones are not elevated by stability. They are elevated by surrender, and surrender only becomes real when control is no longer an option. Think about it. Why would God allow sudden confusion? Why do doors that once felt certain suddenly slam shut? Why do timelines crumble, even when you were doing everything right? What if the chaos wasn't an attack, but a transfer of authority? What if the shift you're experiencing is God pulling you out of the driver's seat because where He's taking you, you were never meant to navigate alone? You call it disorder. Heaven calls it repositioning. You call it delay. Heaven calls it rerouting. You call it collapse. Heaven calls it clearance. Sometimes things fall apart because they were blocking the very path you needed. Sometimes relationships end because they were suffocating the version of you God is trying to bring forward. Sometimes opportunities disappear because they weren't big enough to hold the calling placed on your life. The chaos isn't random. It's targeted. It's the divine handshake between who you were and who you're becoming. But here's the paradox that only the chosen truly understand. The moment your life stops making sense is the exact moment your purpose starts making progress. The confusion is not a sign of abandonment. It's a sign of repositioning. The delay is not a denial. It's a redirection with purpose written into every second. And those moments you feel most lost are actually the moments God has stepped in the strongest. Let me ask you something. What if the path you're terrified to walk is the only path aligned with your breakthrough? What if losing control is the doorway to the alignment you've been praying for, but avoiding at the same time? What if God is interrupting your plans because your plans were too small for the magnitude of what He intends to build through you? Feel this truth. The chosen do not rise through control. They rise through alignment. And alignment requires trust, not in what you can control, but in what you can't. So when everything begins shifting without your approval, don't fight it. Look closer. Because if you pay attention, you'll notice something strange happening beneath the surface. A pattern, a precision, a timing that feels almost too intentional to be coincidence. That's the fingerprint of destiny taking over. And here's the part that will keep you locked in for what comes next. If losing control is the first step, then the next battle will reveal why God needed to break your grip before showing you what He's really building. Continue, because the next revelation is even heavier. Chosen one, there is a battle you never saw coming, a battle that doesn't break your bones but fractures your circle. It arrives quietly, like a shadow slipping between you and the people you thought would walk with you forever. Relationships begin to shift. Conversations grow colder. Someone who once understood every corner of your soul suddenly feels like a stranger. A friend who once celebrated your victories now watches you with a strange silence. A family member who claimed to love you stops showing up when you need them most, and you sit there wondering, what did I do wrong? Why is everyone pulling away just when I need them the most? Why does it feel like I'm being abandoned by the very people I trusted? But here's the painful divine truth. You weren't being abandoned. You were being shielded. You didn't lose them. God removed them because your purpose demanded separation long before your heart was ready to accept it. Some people were never meant to witness the next chapter of your destiny because their presence would contaminate it. Their influence would slow it. Their energy would distort it. Their motives were not as pure as their words. And God saw what you could not. Think about it. Why did their loyalty expire exactly when your calling began to intensify? Why did their support disappear right when your spirit started rising? Why did their true colors show the moment your anointing became harder to ignore? That was not coincidence. That was spiritual exposure. They walked away because staying would have sabotaged you. Their exit was their confession. Their silence was their testimony. Their distance was their revelation. And just because you didn't hear their conversations doesn't mean heaven didn't. They thought their actions were hidden, but nothing is hidden from the one who protects his chosen. Some people were using your kindness as a mask for their envy. Some were pretending to love you while quietly hoping you'd fail. Some stayed close only to monitor your growth, not support it. And others simply could not handle the weight of the calling placed on your life. So God made sure they wouldn't stay long enough to interfere. You didn't lose anything. You were rescued because your purpose is too sacred to be surrounded by the wrong hearts. Your destiny is too rare to be shared with cheap intentions. Your spirit is too valuable to be drained by people who only took but never poured back. Let me ask you something. When that person walked away, did your spirit truly break? Or did something inside you finally breathe? When they left, did the atmosphere around you get darker? Or did it actually get quieter, lighter, clearer? What if the absence you feared was actually the space God needed to build something greater? What if the pain they caused was the final sign that they were never part of the promise to begin with? Look at your life closely. Who left during your becoming? Who disconnected when your light grew stronger? Who faded when your soul began to awaken? Their disappearance was timed with precision because their presence was incompatible with your elevation. And now comes the twist, the deeper revelation most people never realize. The people who left were the easy removals. But what comes next is even more shocking because the next battle isn't about who walked away. It's about what God is preparing to replace them with. And trust me, that revelation will change everything. Chosen one, there's a moment in every divine journey when life stops feeling familiar. The routines that once felt safe suddenly stop working. The places that used to comfort you no longer fit your spirit. The people you relied on can't carry you the same way. The opportunities you thought were stable begin to tremble, and you find yourself asking, almost in a whisper, why is everything shifting at the same time? Why does every comfort feel like it's being pulled right out from under me? Why does the ground I trusted suddenly feel unstable? It's because comfort is the enemy of elevation, and the chosen are never allowed to stay where their spirit stops growing. You weren't designed for stillness. You were designed for expansion. But expansion hurts before it heals. It stretches before it strengthens. It disrupts before it blesses. When God wants to awaken the part of you that has been sleeping, He shakes the structures that kept you tame. Comfort dulls your discernment. Discomfort sharpens it. Comfort keeps you predictable. Discomfort makes you powerful. Comfort keeps you small. Discomfort forces your spirit to rise in ways your old self would never have allowed. Think about it. If everything in your life stayed soft, stable, and convenient, would you ever discover the strength you carry? Would you ever learn what your faith sounds like without the noise of certainty? Would you ever step into the promise waiting for you beyond the borders of what feels familiar? Every chosen one reaches a point where God disrupts their comfort not to punish them, but to activate them. Suddenly doors close that you never expected to close. Money tightens in ways that force you to think differently. Paths that were once open suddenly lock down. Routines that once brought peace now bring restlessness. This isn't spiritual sabotage, it's spiritual training. You are being refined, not restricted. You are being stretched, not suffocated. You are being rebuilt, not ruined. Losing comfort is not the collapse of your life. It's the birth of your spiritual muscle, the part of you that rises when everything around you falls, the part of you that learns how to walk, even when nothing makes sense. The part of you that prays not out of routine but out of raw power, the part of you that begins to sense things before they happen. The part of you that can no longer be shaken by storms because you've survived the hurricane within. Let me ask you something. What if that discomfort isn't a sign that you're failing, but a sign that something greater is waking up inside you? What if the pressure you're feeling is actually the indicator of a breakthrough forming in the unseen? What if the closing of certain paths is the divine redirection to the ones you were always meant to walk? What if this stretching is not God taking from you, but God unlocking you? Feel the shift happening in your spirit right now. You're not breaking, you're emerging. You're not being weakened, you're being weaponized. You're not being pushed down, you're being pushed forward. And here's the hidden truth. When a chosen one loses comfort, they gain clarity. And clarity is the foundation of calling. But what comes next is where things get even more intense, because the next battle is not just about discomfort. It's about watching your entire plan collapse so God can reveal the one that was written for you before you were even born. Stay close. The next revelation will flip your understanding inside out. Chosen one, this is the battle that shakes even the strongest spirits. The moment when your plans, the ones you carefully built, prayed over, protected, and believed in, begin to fall apart piece by piece. You watch doors you were certain would open slam shut without explanation. Timelines you trusted unravel in front of your eyes. Opportunities you thought were guaranteed dissolve as if they were never real, and you stand there wondering, why is everything collapsing at the exact moment I thought I was finally moving forward? Why does every path I mapped out suddenly feel blocked? Why does the future I planned so carefully feel like it just slipped through my fingers? This is the frustration every chosen one faces. The frustration of watching your blueprint burn while having no idea what God is building behind the smoke. But here's the twist. What you call collapse, heaven calls correction. What you call failure, heaven calls filtering. What you call lost time, heaven calls strategic delay. Your plan didn't fall apart because you were wrong. It fell apart because it was too small, too safe, too predictable, too human. And your destiny is anything but human. Let this truth sink into your spirit. A chosen one's plan must collapse before God's design can rise, because if your plan stayed intact, you would settle for what you want, instead of stepping into what you were meant for. You think your plan was clear, but God saw the hidden traps you didn't notice, the people you trusted who would have betrayed you later. The opportunities that looked golden, but were spiritually toxic. The timeline you set that would have placed you in the wrong place at the worst possible moment. You didn't lose your plan, you were spared by grace. Think about it. How many times did something not work out, only for you to look back months or years later and realize, if that had happened, it would have destroyed me? How many times did a closed door end up being the greatest protection of your life? How many times did losing a path lead you to one you didn't even know existed? You're not being punished. You're being redirected with precision. And here's the truth that hurts before it heals. You cannot hold the map and follow God at the same time. One has to go. Either your need for control or God's need to guide you. Either your timeline or His perfect timing. Either your version of the future or the destiny He's trying to give you. The one that exceeds every expectation you've ever had for yourself. So don't run from the collapse. Don't fight the closing doors. Don't cling to the timeline that refuses to obey your logic. Look at the pattern. Look at the timing. Look at how everything that fell apart had something in common. It wasn't aligned with your anointing. What disappeared was not meant to stay. What failed was not part of your purpose. What slipped away was never strong enough to carry the weight of who you're becoming. Losing your plan is not losing your future. It's losing the version of your future that could have sabotaged your calling. And here's where the anticipation rises. Because if God is removing your plan, it's only because His plan is already on the way, and His plan doesn't break you, it builds you. His plan doesn't limit you, it launches you. His plan doesn't shrink your life, it expands it in ways your mind could never have predicted. You're about to see why it didn't work. You're about to understand why every door closed. You're about to realize that the delay was not a punishment. It was a setup for something far greater. But before you can receive that revelation, you have to face the final battle. The one that doesn't just change your path, it changes you. And that transformation is coming next. Prepare yourself. The deepest shift is about to unfold. Chosen one. This final battle is the one no one warns you about. The one that doesn't take something from you. It takes something out of you. It demands a version of surrender that goes beyond letting go of people, plans, or comfort. This battle demands the ultimate release, the death of the person you used to be, and nothing cuts deeper than that. Because your old self is familiar, predictable, safe. Even if it was limiting you, even if it was suffocating you, even if it was built on wounds you never healed, it was still yours. But the calling on your life is too great to be carried by an outdated identity. A chosen one cannot rise while dragging the weight of who they were before awakening, so life begins to peel you, strip you, expose you, not to humiliate you, but to free you. It starts subtly. Old habits that once soothed you suddenly feel empty. Old fears that controlled you begin to lose their grip. Old environments that once felt like home start feeling spiritually too small, almost claustrophobic. You try to step back into who you were, but something inside you refuses to shrink again. You try to think the way you used to, but your mind now rejects those old patterns like a body rejecting poison. You try to ignore your intuition, but it keeps getting louder, clearer, sharper. This is not confusion, it's evolution. This is not loss, it's extraction. You are shedding an old skin that simply cannot follow you into what God is building. Let this image enter your spirit. A serpent cannot choose growth without abandoning the skin it has outgrown. Staying inside that old layer would kill it. Breaking free looks painful, but remaining trapped is fatal. And the same is true for you. Your old self wasn't evil. It was just too small for your purpose, too wounded to carry your assignment, too limited to walk with your anointing, too afraid to stand in the magnitude of who you're becoming. And so God begins the sacred dismantling. He removes the false identities you inherited from pain. He dismantles the masks you wore to survive seasons of darkness. He cuts ties with the behaviors you used to cope, the patterns you used to hide, the fears you used to obey piece by piece, layer by layer. He separates you from everything that once defined you. It feels like dying, because it is a kind of death, but chosen one. What dies is the version of you that cannot access your destiny. What rises is the warrior God always intended you to be. Feel the weight of that and feel the liberation too. Because once this transformation begins, there is no going back. You can't return to small thinking once your mind has tasted expansion. You can't go back to toxic cycles once your spirit has learned discernment. You can't shrink yourself to fit into rooms where God has already removed you. You can't pretend to be who you were when heaven is calling who you are. Here's something most never understand. Losing your old self isn't punishment, it's promotion. It's the spiritual rebirth that separates the called from the chosen. It's the moment where destiny becomes undeniable. The moment your identity stops being something you inherited and becomes something God Himself shaped. And you can feel it happening, can't you? A pull, a shift, a pressure in your spirit that says, you cannot stay the same. That's not discomfort. That's resurrection. That's not fear. That's emergence. That's not loss. That's the unveiling of the version of you that was buried beneath years of survival. And here's the most powerful part. If God is asking you to release this version of yourself, it's because the next version, the one waiting on the other side of this shedding, is the one that finally steps into the calling you've sensed your entire life. And now, everything you've lived, everything you've lost, everything you've survived has been leading you to one final revelation, one final truth, one final shift that will make the entire journey make sense. Stay with me, because the conclusion will tie everything together in a way your spirit has been waiting to hear. Chosen one, everything you've heard until now has been building toward this moment, this awakening, this exact second where your spirit finally understands what your mind never could. None of your battles were random. None of your losses were pointless. None of your collapses were coincidences. Every shift, every tear, every ending, every disruption, it was all part of a divine strategy, crafted with a precision so perfect that only heaven could have written it. You thought life was stripping you, but you were being sculpted. You thought you were being abandoned, but you were being set apart. You thought you were being broken, but you were being rebuilt into a version of yourself, capable of carrying a destiny far greater than anything you imagined. Hear this with every part of your soul. You did not lose, you were being positioned, strengthened, aligned. Everything that fell away was making space. Everything that ended was removing weight. Everything that hurt was carving you into someone who could finally step into their calling without hesitation, without fear, without the chains of who they used to be. Your losses were not signs of weakness. They were signs of selection. They were the marks of someone chosen for a path few are strong enough to walk. They were the proof that heaven was investing in you, preparing you, refining you. And now here comes the turning point. The revelation your spirit has been waiting for. Your losses were your training. Every defeat taught you discernment. Every separation protected your purpose. Every discomfort activated your strength. Every collapsed plan redirected your destiny. And every version of yourself that died made room for the warrior now rising inside you. What you thought was breaking you was actually building your spiritual authority. What you thought was the end was the birthplace of your elevation. What you thought was punishment was preparation for a breakthrough so powerful it needed a purified vessel to hold it. Chosen one, your breakdown was the doorway to your breakthrough, and you are standing at the threshold right now. Let this truth anchor itself in your bones. You are not behind. You are not lost. You are not defeated. You are emerging. You are stepping into alignment. You are walking into the chapter that required everything you endured. And now, to seal this moment, to declare this shift over your own life, speak it into the comments like a spiritual decree. My loss was my lifting. Say it because it's true. Say it because it's prophetic. Say it because heaven responds when a chosen one declares their rise. And now, receive these final words like fire. Your loss awakened your destiny. Your loss broke your chains. Your loss opened your path. And now, you rise.